To get an idea for how much Adsense pays on average, you'd have to collect data from hundreds of different websites covering hundreds of different subjects and divide the total income from all of those pages by the total number of page views. This would be a very difficult task. Fortunately, I have just such a website. When my site was involved in Adsense advertising, I had ads on all 400 web pages of the site. Many of these were great little money earners. I had a web page about growing bulbs, which had a lot of in-depth, valuable content and a lot of very attractive pictures. Tended to make people want to give it a try. Bulbs are inexpensive, and there are plenty of vendors wanting to sell them, so my Adsense ads were always well represented. I got a very high click-through rate, probably well above 3%. Other web pages, for example, my page on ultra-high speed pictures of nuclear detonations, Adsense couldn't find anything that it could put on those, so they earned a zero click-through rate and no money. On average, though, the web pages are the sorts of things you'd find all over the internet. And as such, while each individual page was not representative, because there are so many of them, on average, they can be used to give a good idea for what sorts of earnings you're likely to get from your website. So let's take a look at how the site did. Here are the website's earnings for all of the pages, all 400 pages, from the 10 best months in 2010. As you can see, I had a reasonable amount of traffic and a comfortable, if not stellar, earnings rate. If we divide the total earnings by the total number of page views, we find that for these 400 pages covering many different subjects, I earned an average of 76 cents per 1,000 page views. Now I know Adsense doesn't pay per page view, but for click. But this represents the average actual earnings. And if you're interested in whether or not you're going to make enough money off of Adsense to justify getting into the program, you're probably not going to know what your click-through rate's going to be. You will know, though, what your page views are. So this is a good rule of thumb. Now, the odds are, if you have designed a specific web page to earn money from Adsense, your click-through rate is going to be higher and you'll earn more than this. For example, my average click-through rate was just below 1%. Rates on the in the range of 1 to 3% are much more common. So if you have a well-designed page with good content and the proper keywords that the Adsense spiders can scan and find good ads to place on that page, you might expect your click-through rate to be 2, maybe 3%, in which case you will probably earn 2 to 2.5 times the 76 cents per 1,000 page views. So if you have a web page and you want to get an idea of how much it earns or will earn, find out how many page views you get in units of 1,000 and multiply that by 76 cents per 1,000 page views, and then increase that by a factor of 1.5 to 2.5, depending on how easy it's going to be for advertisers to match their products to what your web page is about. For example, if you've got a web page where you chronicle the restoration of your 1957 Chevy, people are going to be getting on that web page to find out what materials, techniques, and tools you used. Advertisers will be able to find good matches to that web page. Different types of paint, spray paint, surface preparations, and tools. So the odds are that the click-through rate for such a web page would be higher than mine. I would expect 1.5 to 2. Unfortunately, your earnings are just one factor that you need to understand to get an idea if you want to go into business with Adsense. For example, most websites are just 5 to 10 pages. Installing the AdSense HTML snippets is very easy for a site like that. But for a site like mine, waynesthisthandthat.com, which is now sitting at 460 pages, you're talking about a week's work, practically 8 hours a day, installing snippets on all of those pages. That is an undertaking you need to approach with some care if you have such a website. Another issue is taxes. AdSense does send the IRS a report on how much money they paid you. If you end up earning, after deducting your website expenses from your earnings, over $400, you're going to have to pay taxes. And for me, this ended up being around 28% of what I brought home, over $400. That can eat into your profits considerably. And it's kind of unfair because if you earn less than $400, you don't pay anything. If you earn $401, you may end up paying up to $100 in taxes, Social Security, and Medicare bills for that extra dollar. But that's the way the system works. Another problem are licenses and permits. Almost every state has a requirement that if you are a small business, you need to have certain licenses and permits. This varies widely. In Washington State, I had one reference that stated that as long as your earnings are under $12,000 a year, you don't need any of this. If you're lucky enough to live in California like I do, my website, which is just me, just one person, would require 16 different licenses and permits from 13 different agencies. This is a horrible amount of work. It would involve an expense of at least $211 for the initial sign up, and probably a recurring expense of $100 and $150 a year. It is my impression, and I could be wrong, that most people do not get small business licenses. They'll probably get away with it because it's like speeding on the freeway. Everyone does it, so how are they going to catch one person? Well, if they do catch you, the penalties could be severe. So keep that in mind. The tax issue and the license issue can tend to haunt you while you're looking at your earnings and kind of spoil the fun of earning money from your web page. There is a link in white under the licenses and permits, which will help you find out what the requirements for your particular state is. The final issue is dealing with AdSense. Joining AdSense is pretty easy. And putting the snippets in, if you don't have too many web pages, is easy. But a lot of people complain about AdSense because it's rather draconian in its customer service, which is to say it doesn't have any customer service. Practically all of the AdSense administration functions seem to be performed by robots. And all you get are form emails in response to various issues. It's very easy to get banned by AdSense. If you have any problems, it's very difficult to get a hold of them and work these problems. As negative as all this sounds, you have to realize that in one way it's good. If Google AdSense hired thousands of people, and that's what it would take, to have a good customer service system, the money for all their salaries would have to come from somewhere, and that somewhere would be your cut of the advertising income. Most references claim that you get about 68 cents out of every advertising dollar that Google AdSense takes in. If they hired all those people so that you'd have someone there to hold your hand as you work through problems, you might only get 25 cents on the dollar. So in a way, it is a reasonable sort of trade-off. I enjoyed AdSense. I was on it for 4 years. I'm not on it now. I've moved on to other things. But it's nice to get those monthly checks. There are some issues you need to be careful about, but each person has to evaluate those for themselves. What I hope this page gave you was an idea of how much money you might earn, and then evaluate the other issues and decide if it's something you want to get into. Either way, I wish you luck, and thank you for stopping by.